So there's this nifty little process we can do to better understand how your psyche got put together and around which wound it was grown. And have a much clearer understanding of the wound itself and the psyche layers that got built up on top of it. Because now there's all these patterns that we work really hard on to deal with in therapy and workshops. How do I get myself to stop pleasing people all the time, that kind of thing? It's like, well, there was a time when that was the best idea I could possibly come up with to survive in response to a situation in which I felt completely ill-equipped and out of control. And that was the thing that got me through, right? And because of that, I'm pretty wedded to that at a very deep level. That's the strategy that worked when I desperately needed something. And everything else then is going to be variations on that core theme. So asking the question, how do I stop being people-pleasing, for example, not my personal pattern, making one up, is in some ways the wrong question. Right? The better question would be, well, what had me choose that in the first place? And what's been the upside and downside of having that as a primary strategy? That's a better first step, if you will, than just trying to make the thing that saved your life on which your personality is founded wrong and get rid of it. Mm-hmm. Then from that place saying, oh, I see what happened and why I picked that and what happened as a result of that choice. Oh. Now I can make a better choice about what to do with it rather than just trying to make it stop, which is what we do in early phases of consciousness about something. Usually when something arises from the unconscious, we see it, usually, not always, our first reaction is, ugh, yuck. How do I get rid of that? And not a useful frame, in my experience. And certainly not a powerful one. Right, so now if I can see, oh, I see, that's how that, oh, look. And if you can really get the wholeness of it, then you can start to see the brilliance of the design. Like, oh. In the end, we want the thing that you compulsively do in reaction to your wound to become an option rather than a must, a set of skills and tools rather than a reflex. So now I can say, oh, given that I've spent my whole life developing this capacity, here are all the ways that I can make use of that. Oh, okay, all right. Now I'm not quite in so much reaction to it as when I feel compelled. If I'm feeling compelled to do it, it's like the parking tickets. I have to do this pattern. Of course you hate it. You're being controlled by it, right? But if you're not being controlled by it, if you get to decide when to do it and when not, then it becomes an ability, or more often a set of abilities and capabilities. And in one of those cosmic coincidences, turns out to be the perfect training for your personal purpose in life. Go figure. Mm-hmm. In the end, where I'm challenging you to go is the place where you would be so acknowledging and accepting of the benefits of your wound that you would be able to make one of the two following statements. Either, and this is the more spiritual of the two, statement A. Statement A is, I see my wound, I see that I chose that wound, and if I had to do it over again, I would choose it again.
Hell yeah.
Gladly. B, good, let's hear B. No need to commit yourself yet. B is for those who have trouble with the I chose my wound part, right? The I chose my wound implies that at some sort of soul or unconscious level, You chose your parents, you chose the rapist, you chose the abusive teacher or whatever it was, right? And some people, because of their belief systems, can't go there. It's like, no, that stuff happened and I was there. I don't experience the universe in such a way that I can say I chose that. Okay. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I don't want to force people into a belief system in order to be able to do this. That's not my style. So, for those of you who can't do the I chose that, how many of you can see that the I chose that is an option for you? Right? You may not feel like the statement's true yet, but you could see, I could see myself getting to the point, hypothetically, where I could say, yeah, I did that. Right? I picked that circumstance and that wound. No, good. For those of you for whom that's a no, option B is, I didn't choose it, but if I had to do it over again, and I could choose it, I would. Either way, I would choose this wound. That's how you know you've transformed your relationship to the wound. Good. So maybe you didn't choose it, but I see so much benefit from it that if I could do it over again and I could choose, I would. Okay? So as my friend Jeffrey Van Dyke likes to say, the core wound has an expiration date. Right? So if you hang on to it too long, it gets kind of stale, like milk. There's nothing wrong with having a core wound, but at some point you got to kind of graduate out of it. People get confused. They think it's about, and I sometimes use this language when I have to do it in marketing and I can't give the whole explanation, healing the core wound. We're not healing the core wound. That makes it as if it wasn't there. That's treating it as a problem to be solved. That's not the goal. If you ask a trusted source, they say, no, why would you want to heal it? You went to all that trouble to create this thing. Now you're going to throw it away? Come on. Right, that's a trusted source eye view of this, right? It was a purposeful wound. So if I'm not healing it, that means I'm transforming my relationship to it such that I no longer perceive it as a problem in need of a solution. And that's when I know that I've transformed it sufficiently that I can worry about other stuff. So just a few little fine print to go with that goalpost there, that goal that one might take on to get there. The key symptom that you've achieved this is a complete and total loss of motivation. Because the wound provides all kinds of motivation, right? There's this gerbil wheel function that we do where we're trying to keep from further wounding, and we're very busily trying to manage our environment and pick the right person and get the right job and do all this stuff so that no more wounding happens. Busy, little gerbil spinning our wheel, right? But the strategy that we choose cannot actually ever make us safe and prevent all wounding and solve the problem in the way that we imagine it will. So for example, in my case, critical dad, anytime I make a mistake, points it out immediately. His idea of training was me starting to do something as soon as I started to go astray, saying, what happens next? And then I'd freak out because he's yelling at me, and my brain would go blank. I'd have no idea. Use your head, he says. Now my brain goes blanker. Don't ever say that to me. Don't say use your head. Not funny. And so now I'm like frozen in myself, terrified, unable to think. Now my amygdala is taken over. And he's harassing me to solve this problem, which he hasn't really even framed very well. And I'm terrified, and I like emotionally do a turtle. Just, right, withdraw. Wait for the storm to pass. Just feeling inadequate and awful about myself, okay? So one day, driving in the car, we're going on vacation somewhere, and I've been sitting there thinking about this problem of my critical dad. I was maybe 6 years old. No one had been talking for a while, so I announce, Dad, I'm going to learn everything there is to know, so you won't be able to criticize me anymore. No one knew quite what to say, so no one said anything. 6. Yeah. So that was my strategy. I started reading the dictionary. I know a lot. People, I'm like Mr. Factoid. You know, I'm known for that amongst my drinking buddies. It's like people start talking about something. Well, did you know that that country was founded when the Duke of such and such was married to that? I love it. Right? It's great fun. But understand what's happening here, which is I'm going to make sure I never make errors, either in doing things, right, skill or in knowledge. I'll always have the answer and always do anything right the first time in order to get my Father's love. Now, in class, if I'm the one always raising my hand and giving the answer first before anybody else, am I going to experience love from my peers? No. Now, this was very confusing for me. I didn't understand why it wasn't working. And what we do when the wound thing isn't working, what do we do?
Try harder.
More of it, right? This is the gerbil treadmill, right? So I am not going to get love for having the right answer first every time. That's not a strategy that's going to work.
Right.
But that doesn't matter. I'm going to keep trying harder and harder and harder, learning more and more and more and more and more and more and more, right? So the thing about the gerbil treadmill is we got a little generator hooked up to this sucker. We're producing power here off this little gerbil, right, who's running around in circles going nowhere. So you now construct a life and relationships and a job. You're unconsciously doing your purpose. You're helping people, meeting your needs, all this stuff in reaction to your wound. So this is a system that's working, right? And the engine, the thing driving it, is the commitment never to experience this wound ever again. So when I stop minding the wound because I've transformed my relationship to it, the very first thing that happens is all of the energy being driven by that deep avoidance stops. So this happened to a client of mine earlier this year. She called me up and said, Tim, I don't know what's going on. We did all that great work with my wounded child, and now I don't want to go to work. I don't want to do anything. And I said, that's great. She said, it is? There's a really driven woman, right, consultant. I said, absolutely. That means we successfully transformed your relationship to your core wound. And your motivation has left the building. Now, this freaked her out a bit, right, as you can imagine. And some months later, new forms of motivation started to show up. Now she's re-engaged and everything. And she survived. She had enough money and everything was cool in the meantime. Now she's re-engaging in life, and she's a different person re-engaging in life now, right? Actually, in her case, much more feminine, not needing to control everyone and everything, which was her style, right? Things aren't working out? Okay, all right. We'll deal with it. Huh? She could be your twin. Could happen, right? And now she gets to decide how and whether she wants to motivate herself, as opposed to being compulsively driven by this wound avoidance strategy. Does this make sense? As a change agent, the problem with being wound-driven is that you will go about your change agency in a wound-driven way, which is that you project your own problems onto other people and onto society and situations and countries, and then go out and try to fix them. And doing it in that way naturally creates polarization. Because how you enter situations, entering it with that feeling of compulsion that you must change this, that naturally inspires resistance in the people who are already there. Especially those who kind of like it the way it is. You are now a hazard showing up in this situation, right? And if you're operating in a wound-driven, compulsive way, you see them as a problem. They're an obstacle to the future. They must be overcome. And now they get more entrenched, and you get more determined, and now we create a stable dynamic that doesn't move. Right? The force trying to push and the resistance pushing against it, stable. i.e., no change. If you look around, you can see people doing this, making wrong the current paradigm, trying to rally other people in judgment of it, and then demanding that them, the bad people, change and do things differently. Enrolling? No. Slow path of change. Win-lose, painful, tearing, unintended consequences. Very difficult way to go about it. Can you see the dynamic I'm talking about? Michael Moore, by the way, does a beautiful job of this, right? In the film, the culprit is usually identified very clearly, right? These are the bad ones, right? They're doing it to us. We're victims. They have the power. They're doing it to us. Right? And Rich Toffel, the guy who'll be talking to us on Wednesday about money, is one of the architects of gay marriage, of it being legalized. And he did it by founding a political action committee of gay people within the Republican Party. Because all the gays were on the Democratic side, making the Republicans wrong. And he's like, okay, well, that's not going to work. So he went on, McNeil Lehrer, you can see video of him on YouTube, debating a religious Christian right guy, because Rich is a minister, about scripture and what it says about how much of sexuality, right? Going point for point, which this guy never had to do. Actually had someone successfully quoting scripture against him, right? And went to the right wing of the Republican Party, the family values people, and said, rather than just making these people wrong, if we're really serious about family values, then would we be holding them to the same standard as everybody else? But if we tell them that what they're doing is immoral and they can't get married, what's up with that? And so David Brooks of, Shields and Brooks on the NewsHour, he went public with that and said, me and a lot of other conservatives believe that gays should be getting married. That's what family values. So he swung certain aspects of the right wing of the Republican Party in favor of this, and that's what tipped the whole thing over, because those folks created cover for conservative politicians who then, it all happened very quickly when it finally happened, one after another coming out in favor. The first ones were people who were out of office or not seeking office, but so many of them went so fast that pretty soon the ones in office started following suit. And now there's not even any mention of it in the Republican, platform. So, this is another example of we don't need to make anyone wrong in order to make progress, and the person you see as your enemy is exactly the one you should be talking to if you want this to change. Just like the part of me that's blocking me from doing it, that's the one with the keys to the kingdom. Don't talk to anybody else, talk to that. So now we're going to play with it. We're going to get into it. What we're going to do is we're going to get in pairs, and I'm going to take you through a series of steps of exploring what the wound was, how it works, how it played out. This is not going to result in a complete and total permanent transformation of your relationship to the wound for most of you, such that you'd be able to make one of those two statements, A or B, tonight. Could happen, right? If one of you's done a bunch of work on yourself, maybe you're ready to pop, and we'll do this exercise, and by the end of the night, you're like, I'm there! Yeah, baby! Right? Maybe not. We'll see. For most of you, what'll happen is it'll be a big step in that direction. And you'll start to see, as you're starting to see, what's in the way, right? What are the obstacles to being that accepting of myself and the process that made me?